In the first century, the Sanhedrin Council held the ultimate authority in Jerusalem. As the most powerful religious body in the Jewish world, they commanded wealth, temple guards, and the power to imprison or execute dissidents. Standing trial before them is a laborer from the rural north. He is a big-boned fisherman with calloused hands and a heavy Galilean accent. The Sanhedrin's own records note him as an unlearned and ignorant man. Yet this rural fisherman has just preached a public sermon that converted 3,000 people in a single afternoon. The religious authorities demand he stop preaching. He looks the council members in the eye and plainly states, "We ought to obey God rather than men." The Sanhedrin is completely baffled by the unnerving confidence of this uneducated outsider. This man's history contains a specific, embarrassing contradiction. Just weeks before this display of courage, he was hiding in a courtyard, terrified of a teenage servant girl, swearing out loud that he had never even met Jesus. How does a person go from cowardice by a charcoal fire to the total defiance of the highest court in the land? What exactly transforms a brittle man into a rock? The answer requires a look at Simon Peter's origins. He grew up on the northern shores of the Sea of Galilee, working a demanding blue-collar job in the family fishing business. He understood the patterns of the water and the behavior of fish, a life built entirely on practical physical labor. He also possessed a very specific psychological profile. Peter was constitutionally incapable of waiting to see how things played out. He was a man who acted first and thought second. This diagram illustrates the logic of impulsivity, often measured by psychologists using the famous marshmallow test. If you offer a child a choice between one marshmallow right now or two in 15 minutes, conventional wisdom says the patient child wins at life. Impulsivity is viewed as a liability. If Peter were in that room, he would have eaten the marshmallow immediately, but that exact lack of restraint drove his greatest achievements. When soldiers arrived in the Garden of Gethsemane, 11 disciples froze, while Peter drew a sword. When Jesus asked his followers who he was, Peter blurted out the truth while the cautious men stayed silent. When Jesus walked across the sea, the others watched from the safety of the boat. Peter demanded to meet him on the waves. This type of immediate, high-momentum action functions as a form of performed courage. It creates the appearance of bravery, but it is entirely dependent on the rush of the moment. Because it relies on reflex rather than a calculated internal choice, it lacks a mechanism for recovery once that initial momentum is lost. The nerve that led him to step out of the boat was the exact same impulse that made him wildly overconfident. The very trait that drove his spectacular loyalty was the same flaw that made him catastrophically vulnerable to failure. That collapse was highly predictable. During their Last Supper, Jesus told Peter precisely what would happen. "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." Hours later, Jesus is under arrest. It is nearly midnight in Jerusalem. The desert spring air is freezing. Peter stands around a small charcoal fire in the high priest's courtyard, surrounded by Roman soldiers and temple guards, trying desperately to blend in. Then, a servant girl looks at him across the firelight and recognizes him. Peter panics. Under maximum pressure, his performed courage shatters. He denies knowing Jesus. He does it again an hour later. By the 3rd time, bystanders notice his thick Galilean accent, and Peter begins to curse and swear, insisting he has no idea who Jesus is. Then a rooster crows in the darkness. Peter realizes he has broken his most sacred promise. He has hit his breaking point. But stopping the story at this failure is a mistake. This devastating breakdown was the necessary maximum pressure crucible required to reveal the true complexity of his character. Researchers who study human resilience have documented a psychological framework known as coping flexibility to explain how humans recover from catastrophe. We often assume that the people who bounce back best from disaster are the relentless optimists. The data shows otherwise. The people who recover most fully are those who feel the crushing weight of what went wrong and who refuse to make excuses or explain away their own failure. When Peter heard that rooster crow, he walked out of the courtyard and wept bitterly. He didn't blame his survival instincts. He didn't rationalize the circumstances. He absorbed the full reality of his cowardice. 6 weeks later, back on the shores of Galilee, Jesus finds Peter. and he repairs the damage by matching the exact shape of the wound. For Peter's 3 frantic denials in the courtyard, Jesus asks for 3 affirmations of love, followed each time by a simple commission: feed my sheep. This specific repair process integrated the failure directly into Peter's identity, forging a new psychological foundation that was significantly stronger than his original bravado. Which brings us back to the Sanhedrin Council. When Peter stands before those religious leaders, refusing to back down, he is no longer relying on impulsive bravado. This is authentic courage. It is fearless because it already knows exactly what it feels like to fail completely and be picked back up. He has faced the worst possible outcome and moved forward anyway. This visualization shows a fascinating principle in geology. When certain solid rock formations fracture and crack under immense downward pressure, they don't remain weak. Over time, those jagged fault lines fill in with surrounding minerals, and those new mineral deposits are actually harder than the original unbroken stone. The place that broke becomes the last place the rock will ever break again. Jesus renamed Simon the Rock, Cephas, as a prophecy of the indestructible material he would become after he shattered. Enduring authority is architected out of catastrophic failure. Peter saw exactly what he was capable of in his darkest moment, and then, with full knowledge of his own weakness, he chose to step forward anyway. That choice laid a foundation solid enough to support a 2,000-year-old movement.
Be sure to visit captivationcompany.com for more Apostle learning experiences. Listen to all of the Apostle songs at apostlesalbum.online.
And be sure to get our latest book about the apostles at apostlesbook.online.